All right, guys, welcome. It's 11 o'clock Central Time on a Tuesday. We're always here, and we're here doing our weekly coaching session. I have invited a few more people than normal. You're going to see Ken. I'm going to introduce Ken in a second and give you a little background on our relationship. But right now, the background to the Edge classes, as you guys know, I just want to remind everybody, we've been doing these since January of 2015, and we've missed on one hand. You could count the ones that we missed through those 4 years, almost 5 years. Now in December, we'll take a few off like we normally do around the holidays in early January, but that's where we're at to recreate an office prop firm feel. And once in a while, as you guys know, I bring in guest hosts, and Ken Packard from Daniels is going to do it. And I prepared you guys or previewed it in the last few weeks, telling you a little bit about Ken. But Ken and I met back in January of 2013 for business. However, the relationship morphed from a business relationship to an actual friendship, and I think those are the best kinds. So Daniels has invited me to their Christmas parties every December, and at those parties, Ken puts together this token coin with a well thought out message on it, inspirational, motivational message, and then he does about a 7 or 8 minute toast. Now, 7 or 8 minutes is long to keep most people's attention, including mine, but he has my undivided attention all those 8 minutes every Christmas because he does two things. He has great content, and it comes from a place of sincerity. Two unique things, and then when you pull them together, they're pretty good. So that's our relationship. We go and we meet once a month for a cigar and talk about everything, whether it's this business or outside of that. And that's how this came about. He's been looking maybe to do motivational stuff for companies, and I think he has. And then I said, "Would you put something together for us?" And not only did he say yes, but I looked at some of the images and stuff, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I'll let Ken do a bio and background, and let him take it. So you got the ball, Ken. Thanks so much for coming and doing this.
Anthony, thank you very much. I really do want to thank you for the opportunity to present this today, and thank you everyone for having me in your room. And thanks again, Anthony. I want to just echo Anthony's sentiments. Everyone who's in this room, everyone who works with Anthony, I want you to know that the measure of a man is his character and his competence. And when Anthony and I interact, he is always talking about how he can give his best and the most to all of his clients and the people that he works with. And he's very, very well-intentioned and conscientious in the way that he tries to help everyone on their trading journey. So he's a good man, and I appreciate everything. I appreciate our relationship, and I appreciate this opportunity, Anthony. So as Anthony has told us, there's today's presentation, we're going to talk about how to build traders' self-awareness. And I'm going to try and give you some red meat, some things to go on, 5 concrete tips on how you can begin to build that solid trading foundation. So as Anthony said, my name is Ken Packard. I'm with Daniels Trading. Technically, I'm the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer, but the reality is I'm kind of the guy that holds it all together. I manage and train and supervise all of our brokers and branch offices. I'm also in charge of our marketing department, anything on our website, anything from a messaging perspective and all that. I oversee all that. And I'm also a firm principal, so I have to be involved in elements of compliance and new accounts and HR and things like that. And I've been with the company now for about 23 and a half years. Ironically enough, I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Acting, and I moved to Chicago in '95 with aspirations of becoming an actor. I was parking cars across from the exchange, and I wound up in this role. So it's interesting how our stories unfold sometimes. You're on a trading journey as well, but I did reference compliance. So I am registered as a demonstration of respect to the regulators. I just need to put this disclosure up. I would like everyone to please review this. If you're trading, you know that there's risk in trading, but it's important that you understand the risk. So I'm going to leave this up here just for a moment for everyone to please review this slide. Okay, So, and by the way, if you didn't have a chance to read all this, you can get it in the recording after the fact. So I want to be I'm all about expectations, and I'd like to be clear upfront with everyone that you will not learn technical tips and tricks in this webinar. You will not learn technical trading tips and tricks, okay? There are countless resources available to help you with whatever your chosen trading discipline is. And I know that Anthony obviously is very good with doing that. In fact, I would argue that the trading public probably has access to too much information in that regard. And many times we put the proverbial technical cart in front of the foundational horse when people begin their trading journey, because trading is a significant journey and it's challenging. And I've watched people make and lose money in these markets for over 23 years. And I will tell you that there are consistencies on both sides. In my opinion, in order to be successful, you must first correctly identify the nature of the challenge, and then from that reality, intentionally build a foundation to support you for that challenge. I told you about my role within the firm, and I'm going to get more personal with you for a moment. So I've been at it a while, and I'm going to share with you my purpose. My purpose as a person, as an individual who runs this firm and interacts with others like Anthony and now you, is to move others to create deep fulfillment in their lives. Notice I didn't say success, I said fulfillment. And I said to move others, to get you to do something, to create fulfillment in your lives through intentional living. That means on purpose, personal evolution, getting better, and fostering rewarding relationships. Because at the end of the day, we know that our relationships are really the best indicator of our happiness. My personal purpose is aligned with the message I'm about to give, because I'm going to encourage you to inject a new level of intent, doing things on purpose, in your trading journey. And as a result, you should evolve. The goal is for you to get better. So as I said, trading is a significant journey. And like any memorable journey, look, it has its highs, it has its lows. We know this, right? I've seen this time and time again. If your journey is especially impactful, it's going to shape you and it's going to change you. And the value that you get out of it may be much more than what you expected when your journey first started. So I know that many of you are already underway. So speaking of starting, let's start at the beginning. If your journey's already begun, I want you to think back, and I want you to write brief answers to this question. Why did you start trading? I want to be clear. This can be bullet points. It should be organic. It should be off the cuff. Please do not overthink it. There is no right or wrong answer. This is not an essay. Write it down. 1 or 2 sentences. Why did you start trading? Don't overthink it. What were your goals? It's okay if you didn't have any. In the course of human events, many people have started many things. They didn't necessarily know why they started. They didn't think too much about it before they did. So that's quite all right. What challenges did you expect? Did you think about them at all? Did you prepare for them? These are things I want you to consider. Take a moment, write some things down related to that. When your journey begins, we have a blank canvas, but the mindset is really trader versus market. Trader versus market. I love that image. That's the Globex dome of today and the chalkboards of old. And look, they're trading lard and wheat and corn up there. But many of us, irrespective of when you started, the mindset is trader versus market. You start with knowledge that it is opportunity versus risk. Opportunity versus risk. And you start with the hope or the belief that the opportunity will ultimately outweigh the risk. Okay? and the market is the manifestation of the opportunity and the risk. I want to share with you, in all my experience, now how I think about the market. In my opinion, the market is this. It's VUCA. I don't know if any of you have heard of VUCA. This is how I think about it. I learned about VUCA at a leadership seminar that was held at West Point in 2017. And it was a lecture that was actually given by a colonel. And he was talking about managing and leading teams and dealing with uncertainty and things like that. So it was a different context, but it hit me like a sledgehammer in the head. I said, the market is VUCA. And I'm going to go through and give you a definition of what it is right now. VUCA, in essence, discusses systemic failures and behavioral failures. As traders, we are behavioral failures, which are characteristic of organizational failure. And these elements, the elements of VUCA, come together in ways that can confound decisions. So let's go through it. Volatility. Well, clearly we know there's volatility in the market. We have the VIX, right? The nature, dynamic, and the speed of change. Volatility. We get it. Uncertainty. Clearly the markets are uncertain. There's a lack of predictability. There's all sorts of surprises, not necessarily aware or understanding everything that's taking place. I think we can all agree there's uncertainty. Complexity. Clearly, multiplex of forces, often confounding of issues. Sometimes there's a cause and effect chain, sometimes there's not. In general, there's confusion about how to organize around certain events. Lastly, ambiguity. Clearly, the markets are ambiguous. The haziness of reality, Colonel called it the fog of war. Potential for misreads. We misread things all the time when we're trading, right? And mixed meanings, conditions, etc. So, in my opinion, VUCA actually provides a really succinct but poignant articulation of the challenge that we face in the market. VUCA relates to how people view the conditions under which they make decisions, manage risks, and solve problems. And in my opinion, that's trading. So the market is VUCA. Let's just accept that. That's part of the challenge. But we're trading the same market. We're all trading the same market with dramatically different results. So let's not focus on the market because it's going to be what it's going to be. So what should be our focus? After some time in the arena, you begin to realize that your journey is really more trader versus self than when you originally started. Or, said another way, the mirror itself. I would like to propose to you that when you start, these are my words, we view ourselves as an intelligent and logical constant that can learn to adroitly navigate the challenges of the market. We're intelligent humans. We've endeavored to take on this challenge. Unquestionably, this is how we would think of ourselves. But the truth is that we ourselves are equally, predictably unpredictable. We inject our own VUCA into an already VUCA environment. Said another way, we are predictably irrational. So throughout this talk, I'll give different theories. I'll give alternative theories. I'll recommend a couple things for you to check out after the fact. And I really would, I hope everyone does. I hope if there's something that interests you, that you dig a little deeper on it, because that may be the first step towards you investing in your trader self-awareness and following through on some of the guidance that I hope this presentation will give you. This book, Predictably Irrational, is a New York Times bestseller. The premise of the book is that when it comes to making decisions in our lives, we always think that we're making smart, rational choices, but are we? The author refutes common assumptions that we behave in fundamentally rational ways. all sorts of examples, from drinking coffee to losing weight to buying the new car, choosing a romantic partner. We consistently overpay, underestimate, and procrastinate. But these misguided behaviors are neither random nor senseless. They're in fact systemic and predictable, making us predictably irrational. We are predictably irrational individuals who are interacting in a VUCA environment of the market. This is compounded by the fact that trading, as we know, is intrinsically linked to fear and greed. The street knows this. Here we are, the fear and greed index. Some use it to indicate whether a market's overbought or oversold. However you use it, we certainly know that it's relevant, and it's relevant in everyone's consciousness because the index exists. So any presentation on trader self-awareness must address greed and fear. So we're going to quickly cover those subjects. Now, I want to point out there is no generally accepted research on the physiology of greed, but several academics agree that greed, like love, it has the power to send a rush of chemicals to our brains that causes us to put aside things like common sense and our self-control, and it provokes other changes in our minds and bodies. So I think we can all, irrespective of what the academics may tell us, recognize that our brains are naturally activated by financial rewards. We know this. And if we know this, then we also can most likely come to acknowledge that certain traders are in the arena for the emotional high, the desire of hitting that emotional high, the release of those brain chemicals that determine the rush and the states of happiness and or euphoria that we may feel from winning trades. Conversely, we have fear. Here's a definition of fear. The main thing is, look, we put together a string of losers and we begin to deviate, as Anthony would say, deviate from our strategy. We disregard our plans because we fear that we're going to commit persisting losses. But by stepping on the sideline, we also potentially deny ourselves the future profit and opportunity, right? I have one loser, I have two losers. Now it's in my head. Now I'm on the sidelines, and boom, there goes the 20-handle winning trade that would have just made me positive that I missed out on because I tapped out, right? So it can create an ever-tightening spiral that can really affect how we trade. So we have fear of losing. We also have fear of missing out. And I believe that there's the new acronym, right? FOMO, F-O-M-O, not in this presentation, but fear of losing, fear of missing out. Here's some other quotes on fear that I would like everyone to consider. Fear defeats more people than any other one thing in the world. Do you believe that? Is it possible? Marcus Aurelius, if you're distressed, now this one I like in particular. If you're distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And thus you have the power to revoke it at any moment. So I want to make a point here. There's a saying in the pit, and I remind people in the office, scared money rarely wins, right? So nod to the risk of the markets. You should be trading with risk capital. If you have more in your account than you are willing to put at risk, or you are risking more on any one trade than you are comfortable with, then you need to address that immediately, because scared money never wins. Not that you're ever trading because you want to lose or you're willing to lose, but if you're not willing to subject yourself to the risk, okay, then you're forfeiting your ability to let go of the estimate of the fear, as the quote reminds us. So if you can manage to trade accordingly either way, then in essence, you're taking your power back on the fear. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. I thought those were three quotes that were relevant for us to look at. So here's our traditional layout: fear and greed. But I'll give you an alternative theory, because while no one can deny fear, some can't relate to greed. I think if most people are honest, they can catch greed in their mirror of self-reflection, but there are some that just don't feel that their character is representative of greed and they can't really associate with it. So I'm going to give you an alternative. There's an alternative that says that we battle with fear and hope. So I want to ask you, how many losses have come about because you hoped for a better outcome, whether it be more profits or the market turning around to reverse losses that you have had? It's funny, I've got this slide. Forgive me. The Chicago sun is bouncing off the CME building to my north, and it is illuminating me in a similar glow to my slide here. I'm doing my best to move so that I don't fall into darkness. But an alternative for fear and greed, if you don't associate that with that, is fear and hope. Here's another way to look at it. I don't know the origins of this image, but you can find it on the internet. One place describes it as the cycle of investor emotion. Another calls it the market cycle of emotions. In my opinion, this is the wave you ride as you interact with the VUCA of the market. Actually, when Anthony and I were reviewing these slides, he also said, Ken, this reminds me of any new business owner, anyone that's starting a new business. They can take a similar ride, right? We start with optimism and we can get some traction, and then inevitably there's setups. So I think that this curve is relevant in many aspects of our lives, but it's definitely relevant for your trading journey, right? So I want to ask you, how many of these things have you felt throughout your trading career? I would like to submit to you that if you're a self-aware trader, once again, that's what we're talking about here, then you should be able to assess where you are on this graph in any given moment. And if you can assess where you are, then your decisions and your actions, what you're going to do, should be informed, not necessarily determined, but informed by considering this context, okay? And one thing I want to point out, I don't want anyone to, please don't take this the wrong way, okay? I mean this very constructively. We all start with optimism, right? The slides have reinforced this. When we have a new client at our firm and they have 3 or 4 winners in a row, I'm happy for them, but I'm also concerned for them, because if they have 3 or 4 winners in a row, they could find themselves up on this euphoria plot. And they could begin to think that they've got it figured out, when in fact the VUCA of the market really just hasn't asserted itself with them yet. And what's potentially being set up is a more extreme peak to valley trough for that individual as they ride this wave. And those individuals sometimes have more psychological challenge than someone who has a winner and a loser and a winner and a loser. And they recognize the nature of the struggle from the beginning. So just for what it's worth, I think your awareness of where you are on this wave matters, okay? One thing is clear. By the way, one other point. You know, the fear and greed index is obviously up here as well, right? This would be when the greed is high, it's technically overbought, versus the fear, oversold, right? So you can connect these concepts in many different ways that could potentially work for you. Irrespective of this wave, one thing is clear. Here is what we don't want. This is a quote from Reptilian Marketing. Most of the time, people have no idea why they're doing what they're doing, so they're going to try and make something up that makes sense. Alas, we do know that this sometimes happens in trading. You could get whipped up in a frenzy over profits, or you could be ostriching away from a loser. I know that Anthony sometimes needs to talk to people. We abandon our strategies We start doing things out of context from our strategy. And when we're talking about it in hindsight, there's some logical backfilling going on for why we do what we do. It's very clear that this is what we don't want, right? We can't make mistakes and then backfill our logic. I've already said it, but trading really is what we do, when, and why. It's about what you do, when, and why. In my opinion, trading is technique. We're not covering it in this webinar, but we know the street is awash in technique to the extent that you need to be discerning about what technique works for you. There is clinical trading technique, indicators, entries, exits. We love to focus on this part. When we start, we may think that, in fact, that's all that it's about. But as we've learned today, you're in fact leveraging that trading technique in a VUCA environment. And you also need techniques for managing yourself in all of these conditions. The art is how you interplay between all of these elements. Trading is both technique and art. So let's talk about how you're going to manage yourself. In the 1960s, there was an American neuroscientist, Paul MacLean, and he formulated something called triune brain theory. And in theory, what it proposes is that the brain is actually broken into 3 distinct regions. And the model suggests that it's organized into a hierarchy based on evolution, and that's the view of brain development, right? And in essence, the 3 regions are as follows. The first one, from an evolutionary perspective, that developed was the brainstem. We recognize this as the brainstem. This is the survival state, right? Early species just needed to ensure that they survived. So that was the first thing that got addressed. So your brainstem is often your survival state. Next, the limbic system. This is where the amygdala is. You often hear about the limbic system, our emotional brain, where emotion resides. The fundamental question there is, am I loved? The last, from an evolutionary perspective, proposed theory is that our executive state, what can I learn from this? Our thinking selves evolved last, right? So these are the regions of the brain. There was a theory about how they evolved. There's a theory about what was in charge of each, right? So let's take a quick tour. First off, lizard brain. No time for facts, focused on survival, fight, flight, freeze, staying alive, reproduction, sex instinct, eating, being alive. However, I think the last bullet's the most significant. There are events, circumstances that can trigger memories of emotional events that can bring us back, that can trigger our deepest fears. So even in modern life, we can encounter things that can push us down into our lizard brains. And I think that that's something that we should all remember, right? Next up is the mammal brain. This was the emotional center, the blue region, memory, habit. This does drive many of our behaviors and our decision making, right? If you think about it, every day we are hit with hundreds, if not thousands, of sales and marketing messages that seek to call upon our emotional state. The limbic system is what sales and marketing is targeted towards, because it correctly identifies that that is where many of our behaviors are driven from, and decision making. So there is some intuition here, and it is where decisions really happen. We should remember this. Last up, human mind, right? The logical and rational constant that we all thought we were squaring up against the market with when our journey began. I could have chosen anything for the human mind. I said, why not go back thousands of years? Because if you look at the Greek philosophers, you could argue that many of them had it figured out then. We're not any smarter than them in many ways, right? I love this quote from Thales. The most difficult thing in life is to know yourself. Seemed like an appropriate quote for a presentation on trader self-awareness. Our rational minds, our human minds, abstract thought, reasons, rationalization, but it's interesting to know, doesn't really make decisions. Not always. Adopts a theory, then seeks to support and defend it. Backfilling, if you will, from a few slides ago. And in a way, we know we can overthink things. In a way, our human mind can, in fact, slow down decision making, which in fact may be the opposite of what you want to do in a trading environment. So really the summary, oh, I'm sorry, there's two other quotes that I just wanted to share with the group while I was researching my Greek philosophers. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is an act, not a habit. It is a habit, but not an act. And Anthony, I thought you'd like this one, right? Because you are working with everyone to establish habits. There's a saying in the first responders, the military, no one rises to the occasion, you sink to the level of your training. You don't rise to the occasion in trading. You sink to the level of your training. You sink to the level of your habit. It's important for you to remember that. Strong minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Weak minds discuss people. I think of this one at every family event when whatever entertainment trend may be discussed. I crave for the discussion of ideas, but alas, sometimes that doesn't happen over turkey. But I want to thank everyone for engaging in today's webinar where we are in fact trying to discuss ideas. And I hope that some of these ideas are interesting enough that you will carry them forward once this presentation is over. Here's our grid. So when we look at the model, it really does provide us with a neat way of looking at the relationship between the structure and the function of the human brain. However, remember, this is the 1960s. It's the mid-20th century, essentially. Time has moved on. We're in the 21st century now. Modern thought doesn't give as much credence to this segmented, insulated function of the human brain. They actually say that various regions of your brain are working at different points as we work through these different functions. So why did I present it? Because I actually think it does a good job of helping everyone to think about their behavior in different ways when we are in our human brain, when we're thinking, when we're maybe overthinking, when we're behaving irrationally or reactionarily, when we're in our lizard brain, and really what we're looking for is a balance between the three, all right? So it's their collective energy that creates the human experience. As I mentioned, I'll give an alternative. There is an alternative. This is a 21st century alternative to triune brain theory. This book, Thinking Fast and Slow, I encourage you to check it out. It's a New York Times bestseller. The Economist has given it awards. Wall Street Journal, the author received the 2013 Presidential Medal of Freedom. In essence, this book boiled down says that our brain has two systems, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, it's intuitive, and it's emotional. Fast, intuitive, and emotional. System 2 is slower, more deliberative, and more logical. So basically, the book discusses how the two systems shape our judgments and decisions relevant for trading, when we can and cannot trust our intuitions, and how and when to tap into the benefits of slower thinking. And lastly, there are some different techniques that we can use to guard against the mental glitches that often get us into trouble. So I would encourage you to investigate both of these. Here's the final message as it relates to brain theory. Once again, you're not an evolved, rational constant in your trading journey. You yourself are often irrational, arbitrary, and impacted by your self-conscious. And in my opinion, this is a foundational truth that's necessary for you to accept as part of your trader self-awareness. Your trading journey should not be a random walk. We know this. This is a bell curve. You just take a random sample set. This is how the results will fall, right? Your trading can't be arbitrary based on circumstances or feelings of the moment. In my opinion, this is what trading is. You are pursuing hope in a VUCA environment where all you can control is you. But that is challenged by your evolution and your physiology. And as you do this, you will evolve and you will get better in ways that you didn't expect, irrespective of your P&L. So at this point in the presentation, this slide really is the culmination of the messages that I wanted to give everyone up to this point from a trader self-awareness perspective. And I hope that these images now mean something to everyone and that they can think about their trading in a different way. So given that, we are now going to transition to the 5 concrete tips that I think can help you to build a solid trading foundation. First one, articulate so it exists. I have a phrase in the office: if you can't articulate it, it doesn't exist. We have way too much up in our heads. We delude ourselves into all sorts of realities based on what we think. When, as we know, the articulation of things makes them real. You must articulate things, not just think, articulate so they exist. This is why I started the presentation asking you, why did you start trading? Have you write down what the organic truth was at that moment in time? I'm going to encourage you to re-engage with that. Why did you start trading? Where are you now? What were your challenges? What are your challenges? I started this presentation by sharing with you my purpose. I can articulate my purpose. And because I can articulate it, it is very real for me. And I can make it real for others. And I can try to live that purpose every day. I would strongly encourage you to consider and articulate your trading purpose. We've talked about expectations. Perhaps you didn't set expectations in the beginning. That's fine. Like putting yourself in a position to insulate yourself from your fear, you can be very clear with your expectations now. What do you plan to learn? Maybe this presentation is suggesting that there are things you should learn that you didn't initially consider. How do you plan to evolve? Your evolution as a trader on your significant trading journey matters. What future challenges do you anticipate you'll encounter? It's why we showed you the wave, the maximum financial risk and opportunity wave. That is helping you to anticipate the future challenges, both or the future upside that you will. Anthony, I see a hand raise. I don't know if you want to interact with that individual directly or feel free to interject at any point in time. Lastly, what will cause you to fail? What will cause you to fail? Some people are like, God, Ken, all right, fine, I'll articulate it, but what's with the gloom and doom? What will cause me to fail? In my opinion, this is a very responsible question. And in the arc of my career, I've learned that people will completely skip this entire thought process. In fact, by me suggesting for you to consider it and articulate it, it's a demonstration of respect because I'm trying to help you to avoid that outcome. By articulating failure, you're actually more likely to identify it while it's happening, and you're more apt to take actions to change your outcome. So, in my opinion, it's a very important question to consider. Lastly, based on your answers, decide how you're going to track your progress. So I'll give you a little word of warning. Some people would say, that's easy, Ken. How am I going to track my progress as if I'm trading profitably? Yeah, I agree. Ultimately, we do need to trade profitably, but we also have to acknowledge, depending on where we are in our journey at any point in time, we're going to be paying some tuition to the market. There are some traders out there that can't get past, forgive the front phrase, this is a phrase from the pit, eating like a bird and crapping like an elephant. There are many traders out there that eat like a bird and crap like an elephant. So measuring progress for one trader may actually be documenting that they can take smaller losses over time. That trader may not be net positive, but if they're no longer crapping like an elephant and on their path to crapping like a bird, then that actually could be progress for that individual. So just be careful. There may be some temptation for some superficial answers, but you need to really consider where you are in your journey and take it from there. So articulate, but it isn't just one and done. You don't do it once. All right, fine, I'll answer all your questions. And you write them down, you put them in a desk drawer, never to be checked in on again. No, you have to articulate, check back in, and then re-articulate. You should always be monitoring your progress with these. That's tip one. Tip two, actively manage your perception, your lens of perception. Consciously and constructively engage your lens of perception. Your lens of perception has immense power. Now, one way that I try to keep myself from lapsing into my lizard brain, happens for me too, is through the active management of my lens. You can take, here's an exercise for you. Take the same events in your life, a single event. You can write a positive and a negative story for any individual circumstance in your life. Both are possible, but you must deliberately nurture your positive lens, especially as you're interacting in a VUCA environment. Yes, I know that some people are just innately glass half full, but given the VUCA environment that you're trading in, the slippery slopes of fear and losses potentially around every corner, the stakes are higher. So you must actively manage your lens of perception to be as positive as possible. Another way that I do this, I should say, is that I read the Daily Motivator every day. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm getting nothing for referencing this product in this presentation, not paid by them or anything else. I am a genuine believer in the Daily Motivator. Now, I know that Anthony occasionally gives those messages in the trade room, and I know that many of you enjoy them. The gentleman who writes the Daily Motivator, Ralph Marston, he puts it out 6 days a week. He only takes Sunday off, 52 weeks a year, and you can subscribe to the Daily Motivator for $15, 15, a year. So I know that the trade room is enjoying that, but I would encourage everyone, $15 a year, 6 messages a week. It can really help you to actively manage your lens of perception and have the right outlook for whatever the challenges the market's going to give you on any given day. And that is, my days would be much more challenging if I didn't have the Daily Motivator every day. Tip 3, paralysis by analysis. You must avoid paralysis by analysis. Stay in the arena, stick with it. When we talk to new traders, many times they're not comfortable. They say they'll start when I'm comfortable. And we wind up in this chicken or egg type situation, right? Because comfort or confidence comes from knowledge, knowledge comes from experience, and experience comes from doing, right? Demo trading is not live trading. I don't mean any disrespect to any demo traders. Anthony and I talked, the micro contract is a great contract because it's sized that the stakes are small enough that you can trade for real, trade in a live market environment to test yourself without lapsing into being a career demo trader, okay? Paralysis by analysis is a very real thing. Here's the Wikipedia page for it. I was checking it out. I actually learned something. There is paralysis by analysis. I would like to submit to you all that in essence, that's our frontal lobes. That's our human mind, our Greek philosopher, rational, constant minds, squaring up against the unpredictability of the markets. That your human mind is the paralysis by analysis. The flip side of that, a phrase that I hadn't heard before until I researched this, is extinct by instinct. We talked about riding the middle, right? Perhaps this is why the silverback is often the one who reigns supreme. We can have paralysis by analysis. You can overthink things and ultimately do nothing, or you can underthink things, slip down into your lizard mind, and there's the very real risk that your trading can go extinct if you're only by instinct. That's the balance that you need to maintain. Every trade has a story. This is tip 4. You should document them. Every trade has a story. Document them. We learn from stories. The real question is, can you learn from your own? Can you learn from your past mistakes? History, doomed to repeat it. Yes, Ken, we know. But how many of you are actually doing this? How many times will you make the same mistake? Would you be less likely to make the same mistake if you, in fact, were documenting them? Remember, and this sort of plays upon tip 1. If you can't articulate it, it doesn't exist. If you can't articulate the story of the trade, then it isn't real, and it won't sink in, and you'll probably do it again. Anthony understands the veracity of this point. Entrepreneur that he is, he's created his own product for this. Verbal journal. I'm sure many of you are aware of it, right? The whole concept is that you can make it easy for yourself to tell yourself the story of your trades by recording an audio file on your chart, right? Anthony recognizes that every trade has a story, and Anthony recognizes the value of you being able to review that so that you can learn. He's in lockstep with point 4. The last one, don't go it alone. Everyone fancies themselves the exception. We all want to conquer the world single-handedly. We take on the challenge of the markets by ourselves. We envision ourselves omnipotent, self-directed traders who are going to, rational constants who are going to square up against the market and beat it consistently. Fact of the matter is, very hard to do. And as any of you who have been around a while know, losses and fear do not mix well with isolation. In my opinion, losses and fear in isolation is one of the strongest triggers that can push you into the lizard brain, which has the risk of having you go extinct by instinct. So whether it be a trading community, the trading room that you're all in, you're not going it alone. You probably didn't start there, but you sought it out because you recognized that it was necessary. Our firm works with a lot of farmers and those in the agricultural industry. There are farmers in distinct corners of this country that don't have access to that community. You know what they have? They have the corner coffee shop. Brokers of farmers know that many times they don't go it alone by the conversations they have with people in the corner coffee shop. And yeah, sometimes that don't going it alone could be through a broker. You want someone to talk to, someone to interact with, a sounding board, not necessarily a broker to give you trade recommendations, just like Anthony isn't here just to give you what he hopes will be winning trade recommendations. It's the interaction, sounding board, helping you to evolve. That's what matters, because as we know, having someone to talk to matters. I love this one, right? Wilson, Tom Hanks in Castaway knew that having someone to talk to matters. That distinct moment in that movie where he could either go for Wilson or choose survival and go back to the raft. And we know how lost, how crushed he was, even though he had a chance at life, when he lost the person that he talked to. Having someone to talk to matters. It's important that you maintain that. So just to summarize, here are our 5 concrete trading tips. Articulate and re-articulate, manage your lens of perception. You must avoid paralysis by analysis, and also avoid extinct by instinct. Every trade has a story. Can you tell them? Do you know what you were doing, when, and why? Can you articulate it? If you can't, it's not real. Don't go it alone. We're going to get into the wrap up. We've talked about how to build trader self-awareness. Everyone's been given 5 concrete tips for how you can build a solid trading foundation. Trading is a significant journey. We've talked about it. No matter what you thought when it started, you quickly began to realize that it's about much more. Perhaps unexpectedly, you began to realize that it's about you. And that's why the title of this presentation deals with building trader self-awareness. Trading is both technique and art. There is much you will face, but the opportunity is still very real. If you choose to evolve in unexpected ways along your journey and follow even some of the suggestions you've received, as promised, you'll realize that you got much more from your trading journey than you originally understood. Here's a final thought for everyone. I watch TED videos. Perhaps some of you do as well. TED videos, they're very interesting. Some of the brightest minds in our world, certainly in our country, talk about vast subjects. These are 20-minute, succinct articulations on heady ideas. And they're motivating, and they're inspiring, and they're thought-provoking. But many times, we watch them and we do nothing. Just like, I'll be candid, there's a very real risk, irrespective of what you thought of today's presentation, even if it did impact you in a positive way and gave you some things to think about, it may live with you for a while and then drift like Wilson from the raft. I encourage everyone to watch this TED Talk. Why TED Talks don't change people's behavior. I would like you to look at it. By the way, there's other very similar talks on this, all right? It says, look, in essence, the summary of this is, TED Talks are great. TED Talks matter. But many times people don't change their lives as a result of them, right? What's the point if we don't take action? So here's the succinct summary. Information doesn't move us. I've presented a lot of information in this. I know it's not going to move you. Desire moves you. That's ignited and grows on your most potent personal truth. That's your identity. As a trader, as people, the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves is what creates our identity, and that creates our desire, which is what will push us to act. Who we think we are is why we do what we do. So irrespective of whatever you wrote for why you started your trading journey, perhaps after today, you can think about yourself as a trader in a different way. And if part of your story is that you recognize the importance of evolving in this way, if you can associate an evolution, as I've suggested, as part of your story and a necessary evolution of your trading identity, then you have a shot of actually following through on some of the things that were suggested. That is my ultimate hope for everyone. That is my wish. as I stated with my purpose, I want you to live and trade intentionally in a way that fosters your own evolution so that you can be fulfilled. So please check that video out and consider the ways that you can make this part of your trading identity so you have the desire to do something real with it. Thank you very much.
Ken, awesome, man. Awesome stuff. I knew I was going to like it, and then it met and exceeded my expectation. Can I say a couple things?
Please.
Yeah. So number one, I feel funny not having myself on a video cam, but my hair is a little messy. So I'm not going to do that. But what I will do is tell everybody that Ken has been gracious with his time to leave some time for questions if you guys have them. Pop them in as I go through some of my points, and then we could circle back to some of those questions that you guys might have. Couple points. I noticed that the boxer image is an Italian guy, so I'm a little offended by that. But I did, you kind of recovered nicely because you compared me to Socrates. So I think the first time I've been compared to him. So that's a compliment to him. And then funny thing about it made me think about the coin. Every Christmas, like I told you guys at the beginning, Ken puts a ton of thought into these coins, and they're not just cheapy type coins. They're really nice, and I've collected them since I started going in 2013. And last year, he had, there it is, which that was last year's. Last year's,
Yep.
Every year is better than last year. I don't know if you intend to do that, but it just happened. So every year is better than last year. So if you look around the ring of that one, you might not be able to see it, but everyone who's involved in the organization has their initials on it. And at the top, I see AD, and I'm like, wow. I didn't think he thought that much of me. And I told my kids, this is me. And I said, Ken, thanks for having me on there. He says, well, in his sincerity and his honesty, he says, that's actually Andrew Daniels, the owner and founder.
The founder of the firm, Andy Daniels. Yeah.
Yeah. I says, well, let's pretend it's me. I already told my kids it was me. So he says, all right, that's fine. But those coins are cool. I've got like, I don't tell anybody this, but I take 2 or 3 each time. He leaves a bunch on the table. I always take a couple extra ones. So anyways, this was awesome. And the one thing that always comes to my mind when there's good stuff, and it was as Ken was showing me this a few weeks ago, I thought, man, all the great information and inspiration, and then we do nothing. You know, the saying of don't sweat the small things, and then the first small things that the first small thing that happens after you hear that, you sweat it, right? You could hear someone say about not sweating the small things, and 10 minutes later, if someone cuts you off on the road, you want to get down his throat and kill him. So it's like, how do we, in your opinion, how would we, and then you put that, and then I didn't even know about that video. And then he shows me, hold on, we'll get back to that. And he shows me the video that I'll pop the link in afterwards to that 15, 20-minute TED Talk about that very thing. How do you take inspiration into action? Would you have any suggestions as a group how we could do that?
You're asking the group, right, Anthony?
Well, no, I mean, do you have any?
Yes. Well, I think that you have a recording of this, and to whatever extent everyone is willing and wants to, I would start. Let me activate my slides here. Give me.
And by the way, the glow that's come from you it was cool because it came when you had a couple slides that matched it, and the glow's coming from the very building that everybody is trying to master, the CME building that Ken's office is across the street from.
I would start here. I think that everyone should. We talked about, you know, the VUCA of the market, the nature of the challenge. Everyone has their strategy. We talk about what we do, when, and why. Right. You've been encouraging people to document their trades from the beginning. I think you need to start by anchoring everything to the questions that I've posed here, right? Start with tip 1. That would be my recommendation, right? You can build on this as you see fit, and then consciously work the other maintenance tips, if you will, because in a way they're kind of maintenance tips, right? I mean, you could start with your articulation But a lot of this is maintenance. So start with your official answers, go on record, right? But then every trader needs to ask themselves, am I willing to have it be part of my trading identity? Do I have sufficient desire to make these steps part of my daily process, of my maintenance, of my trading identity?
Yeah, and one thing that Wilson, for me, and I think a lot of people, but for me, really hits home because I know I couldn't do it alone. I know a lot of people would
Right.
attest to that. I don't think anybody can. What I thought through this presentation is, and I think this is part of maybe the lizard brain or I don't know which one. Maybe it's an overlap of all three, but I think what we all think about, because this is what I think about, and I always try to get a tell off of what others are thinking about as how I would think about it, right? So it's
Right.
like eh, that's the best tell because we're both human. So my thought is, how can I succeed without doing any of this stuff? And then I'm thinking, give me an example. I'm asking myself of someone who succeeded at trading or anything else without help by themselves. I couldn't think of anyone in trading or, I just couldn't think of anyone that could do it. And some guys had an unbelievable edge or advantage, but still didn't matter. It was until that they were put around other people that were the right people that they begin to have that success. So it's like we try to find the path of least resistance. How can I be successful? Hey, this is great stuff, but how can I be successful without doing any of this stuff? And then a lot of people go like, well, I wish I would have started this way. I wish I would have started to articulate and start the right way. But the bottom line is start now. If you want to be better and more organized, start now. It's like, I wish I would have started organizing notes and everything else from the beginning. Well, who cares? Start now, right? You got the tools to do it. Start now. And I thought my idea was right in line with what you had said. Some some ways to take this information into action. We kind of overlap. This is how I think great ideas happen is you don't really think of them too much, but it was me bouncing an idea off of you about doing this presentation. And then it just, I think, intuitively came to me to have guys do a success sheet. We just happen to call it. And it's a SWOT, strength, weaknesses, and all that stuff is what it ended up being. But things that you think are important to know and whether or not you think you know them. Maybe there are things you think you need to know and you don't, and you left them off your sheet. Or maybe there are things that you don't have on your sheet that you better have on there to succeed in this business. So you don't know what you don't know until you articulate it. And that's part of putting that sheet together. And then at a couple subsequent coaching sessions that we've done on Tuesdays, we went over other people's sheets and I told them, I said, it's got to be a living document though. You got to go back to it. You got to keep it up. You got to see if you could check the better column. Am I getting better at this? Am I getting worse at this? Should I add something to it? Do I not have to need that one? Do I have a review buddy to go over my trades and he goes over, or I go over his trades, he goes over my trades regularly? Doesn't have to be for hours a day.
Right.
You don't get in shape by working out 3 hours a day in a week. You're going to look like me. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort. And one thing that I heard that inspired me to a degree was you don't fall in love with someone one day. It's those you don't get in shape one day. It's those incremental things that build, and on the 21st day you notice a change. You didn't do anything different working out that 21st day. It was the combination of all those little things, 21 days, that you begin to notice a change and document it. And it goes back to documenting and articulating, or it does not exist. So, the verbal journal is a great tool for people to use. And I think the people that have it don't use it. And I think the people who have it and use it find that out. But I want to take, without keep going on and on and on and on, I want to take this presentation and this content into action. And every Tuesday we have the opportunity to do that by maybe listening to people's answers to those questions. And I think that's what we'll do. We'll go over people's answers to those questions, and they should want to answer them. By the way, my answers, and I wrote them down, the 3 things that got me into this business. Number 1, I always wanted to do something in my life that I could make more money than average. And it was a doctor until I was sick, afraid of blood. Then it was a lawyer until I was afraid of work. And then it was trading once I learned it existed. And then I got a job on the floor and I loved the environment. And it was like I could make above average living. I love the environment. And it didn't seem like a job. So those three things were the reason why I got started. The one thing that was absolutely wrong was it doesn't seem like a job part, where, you know what, unless early on it didn't feel like a job, and then you're like, well, if you want to make more, you got to do more. And now it doesn't feel like a job when you love it or have some passion for it. But I guess that I shouldn't say that was wrong. It's just like everything that you're going to have continued success with takes work. You're not going to figure it out. I got a great marriage. And by the way, it's my wife's birthday today, but I didn't have a great marriage and say, I don't have to work on it anymore. It's going to stay great for the next 25 years. No, you got to keep working on it. So I didn't mean to go off on a tangent and just keep talking, but a lot of great things are coming from this already. Do you mind if I ask a couple questions from the group?
Please.
All right. Let's go up to Clayton asks, he says, first of all, thank you for this great thought-provoking presentation. Lots of ideas. I've already checked out that Predictability Irrational ebook. What is the name, if you remember, of the speaker at West Point, at the West Point event you attended?
He was a colonel. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but I actually, hold on one second.
No, take your time. It'd be funny if he came back dressed like a colonel.
That's the event I attended.
Nice. When was that, Ken?
Free Ethos Leader Metrics. So if you want to check out Leader Metrics, what key decision makers need to know when serving in a critical leadership role. It was April 7th, 2016. Oh, I got the year wrong. I said 2017. It was actually 2016. Anthony, they gave me a coin too.
Is my name on it?
It's a nice coin, but
yeah,
it's not a DT coin. Yeah.
They got the idea from you.
But he was, so to answer your question, he was a former colonel. And he was doing consulting, basically corporate consulting. He was introducing CEOs to different leadership styles from the military, and that's where VUCA and all that came in. Because when organizations are in distress, when you're dealing with things like that, and you're in, like we said, systemic errors and behavioral errors that can lead to organizational failures. That was the point of that content in that setting.
Another question is Thinking Fast and Slow is the name of that other book. So the two books were Predictably Irrational and Thinking Fast and Slow, correct?
That is correct.
Ron,
and here's the thing. You just start looking into these things, and my hope is that they're interesting to you as a trader. Because I've been doing it for so long, everyone wants to talk about entries, exits, managing their trades, right? And the things that I've shared with you today are the things that people don't invest in, they don't think about, they don't talk about, they don't research, they don't challenge themselves to evolve in this way. Everyone's a wakeboarder. Everyone's a wakeboarder skipping along the surface, trying to trade their oscillators and moving averages and everything else, darting in and out of candlestick patterns. You got to anchor it, hook it deep in the iceberg to something else, and recognize if you're not right foundationally, doesn't matter what you try and do on the surface, you're going to screw it up eventually.
No, well said. Well said. Ron makes a point that I'll make a comment on. Another problem is so oftentimes people are introduced to successful people after they become successful and don't really know what they went through to get successful. In other words, how much work went into it, and they don't just get successful via luck and whatnot. My comment to that is, and then you could comment on it, but it's like find the common denominator among successful people, and then that's what you focus on. And I think the common denominator is group, togetherness, work hard, and it doesn't seem like work when you do it with a team.
Or you have, so can I get a bite of that one?
Of course.
That's an excellent point. Look, everyone like Bezos, Steve Jobs, Buffett, whoever you want to talk about, okay? I agree 100%. Everyone is focused on the glitz of the ending, when in reality, in my opinion, the real story is this graph, which you intrinsically went to, Anthony, right? In my opinion, the real story is that those were individuals that had very clear vision and purpose and commitment, and they were willing to, they rallied a team around them in pursuit of something they believed in. It was intrinsic to their identity, which is how we ended this. And everyone wants to focus on the outcome, but in my opinion, the real story is, what was it like here, right? Yeah. How many people tapped out at the bottom? The real story is the hardship. Bezos himself has said in interviews, I've made billion-dollar bad decisions, right? He says, I've made decisions that have cost $1 billion, right? But it's how they adjusted that matters, right? In my opinion, that's the real story. So it's a very good point. Don't get too whipped up by the known happy ending outcome. Prepare yourself for the battle in the middle. That's why I talk about expectations and all that and being upfront about that.
And it's your ability to find the support, the balance at the despondency, because you don't expect it. You don't expect the pullback.
Right.
In a business, I when I seen this chart, I think I did in fact a Tuesday session 2-3 years ago. Every business, whether it's getting into trading or any business idea people have, you have the optimism, the excitement, following that line, the thrill, the euphoria. And all of a sudden, it costs a little bit more than I thought to do this. It's taken longer than I thought. Not as many people are buying it as I thought. And you go down to the fear, desperation, panic. It's your ability to find the bounce, because you're going to have the pullback. Do you find the bounce and then go out of depression, back to relief, back to optimism? Because you're going to go through those things. If you have an expectancy of them and you're around other people, you pull yourself out of it and get back to being optimistic and having ideas. I think Tony Robbins talks about that vicious circle. You're like, this isn't working, so you do less. You do less, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work, then you prove yourself to be right. And it's like, well, the more you do, the better chance it has to work. But if you tell yourself it's not working, you do less. You do less, it's not working. It's not working. See, I was right. And it becomes, there was a reason for it. You got to avoid the tap out. And most great ideas have a pullback that was not expected. In my trading journey, going to make all this money from the beginning, above average. My first pit trading endeavor was a complete failure. I barely traded, couldn't make money. So I felt that denial, fear, desperation, panic. And unless I stayed with it, kept at it, found where the opportunity was at that point, then I find that balance. And that was from the floor to the screen. But if I just continue to go down to despondency, you and I wouldn't be talking right now, right? I'd have tools on my belt, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I would be an electrician. That's what I almost did. But great stuff, Ken. Great stuff.
Another quote I say is, Lincoln lost the Civil War for the first 3.5 years, right? I mean, the Union was losing for well over 3 years. They pulled it out at the end. Similar graph.
And if he tapped out, we'd be two different countries now.
Well, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to pop in the link to that TEDx or that TED Talk that you talked about. Yep. I'm going to tell guys that we will continue these. I'm going to encourage guys, and I always say this, if you actually worked at a prop firm and worked for me, you'd have to do these things. You'd have to answer the questions that you put forth in this video. I'll upload it to your private portal so you guys could watch it again, but answer the questions. And then from here, as we move to the end of the year, we'll go over other people's answers to those questions and see how that could turn this into action that's consistent as we go and create a tighter and tighter bond, because people are sharing more and more personal stuff. That's how you get closer to people. The other thing that's great about this presentation is at some point you realize, holy shit, I never thought I could do that. Right? You push your limits and you look back and like,
Right.
I never dreamed I could have done this. And it could be athletically, it could be physically, it could be mentally in that achievement. And this comes just from growing. And you look back and say, well, I did. But you got to create action. There's just no question about it. So Eric says, thanks, Ken. Thanks, Anthony. Some of the best stuff I've heard. Going to re-articulate my original reasons for trading.
Wonderful.
So
hey, I threw my name up here again. If anyone wants, I'm not a social media guy, but I am on LinkedIn. So if you're in this room and you want to shoot me a connect by LinkedIn or anything else, feel free.
No, that's awesome. I haven't gotten my invite to the Christmas party. I hope I will.
The save the date went out.
I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. This was awesome, though. I'm not just saying it.
All right. Well, thank you all again.
Great stuff, Ken. Thank you for coming.
The best reward will be if people follow through, and
Yes.
and you have the forum and the setting to do so with Anthony. So to me, that would actually be fulfillment of my purpose. So if there can be follow through that allows you to live intentionally and evolve so that you can be more fulfilled, then that would be a satisfaction of my purpose when I set out. I'll leave everyone with that. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. We loved it. Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch.
All right. Take care. Good luck, everyone. Stay alert. Stay alive.
All right, buddy. Thanks again.
Thanks.